Police in Lagos clashed with protesters on Sunday today as they attempted to mark the 4th anniversary of the End SARS movement, which gained global attention in October 2020. Officers deployed tear gas to disperse demonstrators who had gathered at the Lekki toll gate around 8:30 a.m., waving banners and placards demanding the full implementation of recommendations from various judicial panels established under or after the initial protest. The #EndSARS protest began as a movement against police brutality, particularly by the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad. The protest peaked at the Lekki toll gate, where reports of violence and fatalities emerged following an intervention by security forces, including the military. Despite promises of reform and accountability, many of the judicial panel's recommendations are yet to be implemented, leaving protesters disillusioned. For a conversation about the End SARS Memorial and other human rights issues in Nigeria, I'm now being joined by human rights lawyer and activist Deji Adeyanju. Deji Adeyanju, thank you very much for joining us on this Live the Sunday Talk Show. Well, first,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, the state police commander in Lagos today, where we had the incident of, persons being arrested, as in Soweto and 17 others, were told by their lawyer that they have now been released. But the police commissioner was quoted as saying that they didn't take permission, they didn't seek police clearance, and that they had been warned that there should be no protests at the Lekki toll gate without police clearance. Now, do people need police clearance to protest, to demonstrate? Is the police commissioner correct?
At all. At all. People do not need police permit or protection of any sort if they choose or they elect not to do so. In fact, the police is under obligation, according to provisions of the Police Act, that once they are aware of any protest, that they are under obligation to protect citizens. The Locus Classicus case of Inspector General of Police and All Nigerian People's Party in 2008 has already settled this matter, that police permit is not needed whatsoever for citizens to exercise their constitutional guaranteed right of freedom of assembly, vice versa, and that simply expressed that citizens have the right at any time that they so desire to hit the street and protest grievances against the government. And there is no gainsaying the fact that, this right cannot be derogated from. The exceptions that can warrant derogation of these rights are contained in the Constitution. That is maybe in cases of, like we witnessed during the COVID breakdown, maybe if there's a cholera outbreak or any health issues and other sundry issues that have been declared and stipulated in the Constitution, and none of those instances have arisen. It's unconstitutional. It's a brazen attack on our constitutional democracy for the Lagos Commissioner to have been quoted that the protest that protesters cannot exercise their franchise, and their right to protest peacefully. It's also an assault on the judiciary, because there's already a decided case at the Court of Appeal. So in other crimes, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police will have been relieved of his duty and his job, but he still has a job. It's an aberration of some sort that he still has a job, even as at 5 p.m. today, after the brazen attack on our constitutional democracy in Lagos. The attack also on peaceful protesters in Abuja by tear gassing them is a flagrant abuse. It's a flagrant abuse of our Constitution and a decided case that I just referenced earlier.
Okay, in 2020, the End SARS protesters had specific demands. 4 years later, what's your assessment of how far government has gone with meeting those demands, particularly the clause that persons who had been detained and all of them, who had been brutalized should either be compensated and persons in detention should be released. As at the year 2022, over 40 persons were still in detention.
Yes, it's such a huge shame, really, that when other nations are making technological advancements, going to the moon, going to the space, and other scientific innovations, that we are still in 2024. All we are still talking about is right violations, which we had witnessed during all kinds of protests in this country, from the Aba Women's Riot to the Ali Must Go, to the Enugu coal miners strike, to the June 12, to the End SARS, to the End Bad Governance. That this is what we are still deliberating and discussing in 2024, when people are already living, in outer space and exploring scientific innovations. And it is truly shameful that none of the recommendations of the various panels, whether it be in the Lagos, Abuja, and other panels, Port Harcourt, and all that, have been fully implemented. That the only thing that was done was the political suspension or disbandment of the criminal SARS unit. But the police have continued to operate with impunity of some sort. I wouldn't say that, yes, there is not some give and take here and there, but by and large, the struggle for de-escalation, the struggle for de-radicalization of Nigerian police from being a police force that intimidates, a police force that harasses people, has not been achieved. And the other issues that form the reason, the basis upon which the NSAS campaign was started, that people lost their lives for, have also not been met. That is issues around injustice, issues around restorative justice, compensations for family victims. Many of the protesters are still in custody. This is a serious embarrassment to our constitutional democracy.
Okay, look, journalists also suffered. It was only this week that in Lagos State, the coroner's inquiry into the murder of Pelumi Onifade began, a 20-year-old journalist who was killed somewhere around Agege, a suburb of Ikeja. Now, for 4 years, the mother says the body has not been found. Nobody knows where the body is. And I guess there are many other persons like that, people who died because Nigeria happened to them. Now, in Lagos State, compensation had been paid to quite a number of people. How do we prevent this kind of needless waste of lives just because the people are protesting against brutality or hunger or brutality, as it were?
Yes, very simple, that officers who are responsible must be dismissed, because when bad behavior goes with no punishment, then impunity persists. Look at today in Abuja. Protesters were protesting peacefully at the Eagle Square. Police just attacked them for no just cause. The officer who was in charge of that team ought to have lost his job. The Lagos police commissioner who attacked protesters and subsequently arrested them should have lost his job. The people who killed Pelumi and others in Lagos and in other parts of the country, should not have a job by now. That is the only way that we can protect human rights and safeguard citizens' rights generally in our country. That when people get away with bad behavior, then impunity persists. Then people don't take, because you have to create some form of deterrence for officers, so that they can be able to see that, yes, when the wrong thing is done, there will be repercussion, and that there will be disciplinary actions, that will follow. If this is not done, then the situation that we witnessed during SARS, where citizens were gunned down in broad daylight, and people come to the panels to even justify it. People were waving flags at the toll gate, singing the national anthem, and in broad daylight, when the whole world was watching via live stream, people were shot, and people came to the panel to justify that.
Well, there are two sides to every story. Now, journalists were arrested, journalists were brutalized, persons were killed. But you recall that policemen too lost their lives. I mean, how about the families of those policemen, the police stations where the protesters, set, cells ablaze, destroyed government property, all the buses in Lagos State provided for easing transportation in Lagos. Now, You know, that's like impunity at one level, responding to impunity at another level. On this occasion of the anniversary of NSAS, do you have a word to say to all the policemen, some of them innocent, who lost their lives, their wives and children, who lost their beloved ones? Nobody talks about that side of the narrative.
Yes, basically, security of life and property is the primary responsibility of government as encapsulated in Section 14 of our Constitution. When there's a breakdown of law and order in any society, the government is to blame. The police, the army, the SSS, who are supposed to gather intelligence, they failed the nation, they failed the citizens. So it is not citizens' responsibility to protect fellow citizens. It is the security agency's responsibility that is to protect citizens in the country, because this is why taxpayers pay them to keep them safe. So there is a complete breakdown of law and order in the country. The right and the appropriate authority to blame is the security agency. So first, we must put the blame where the blame ought to be, and that is that the security agencies failed to protect citizens during NSAS. They also failed to protect their own security personnel and the stations. And we saw during NSAS that we must not forget that government were the one that sponsored thugs in order to attack peaceful protesters. There is no single peaceful protester, no single NSAS protester who attacked a policeman. In fact, they were giving police officers and other security agencies water and food and drinks, soft drinks as a sign of good gesture towards them. It was the thugs that were recruited by the security agencies and the government at that time that attacked and killed innocent protesters. We saw security vans, including police vans here in Abuja, in Kubwa, in many parts of Abuja, in Apo, dropping off thugs. The videos are still on the internet and they are still fresh in our memory. Dropping off thugs to attack peaceful protesters. You know, the security agencies colluded with armed thugs to unleash mayhem on the citizenry. And those things that were done, they were done with the aim of, putting a stop to the NSAS protest. Generally, they tried all kinds of strategy to stop the protest because they felt Buhari, the then president, even said that the NSAS protest was a regime change.
Anyway,
So they felt that it was a regime change and they needed to quell the protest. So that was why all those things happened. And they used non-state actors to unleash violence on the nation so that they can have justification to say that the protest had turned violent.
Okay, Deji, we have a video on, what happened in Lagos. Let's take that shot very quickly, and then I'll come back to you as we wrap up this conversation.
The police will come here and start harassing us. I didn't like now.
We're asking here today, when the right to commemorate the dead has become illegal criminalized in this country, we're standing here to mark the passing of our brothers and sisters who were brutally killed 4 years ago at the Lekki Toll.
Okay, Deji Adeyanju, that's the video from Lagos early this morning when the protesters were arrested. Is it similar to what happened in Abuja? It looks like in Abuja it was just tear gas. Nobody was rushed into...
Yes, protesters were just attacked in Abuja and dispersed forcefully for no just cause, basically. It's like the government saying that to hell with the constitution, to hell with rule of law. that the only reason is that, oh, people cannot protest. I don't understand what kind of a constitutional democracy we are running. And the level of lack of decorum, about constitutional norms, judicial precedent that has been set in the country. This particular government does not just give a damn about doing the right thing. There is no even any intention to pretend that we are running a constitutional democracy. So they don't want protest of any kind, whether it be end bad governance protest, whether it be NSAS memorial. They just don't want any protest of any sort. And that's why one is not surprised. This is the same clueless government that has charged end bad governance protests for treason and continue to enable the Buhari regime continuous detention of NSAS protesters in custody. And this is a man, we have a man in the villa who was a perpetual protester himself, and he does not see anything wrong in all these constitutional violations.
Well, thank you very much, Deji Adeyanju, for joining us on This Day Live, this Sunday talk show. Thank you indeed for your insights and for your time.